after taking reservation, you have already come in the mainstream of the society, then why should such people again continue to have reservation? I have always been of the view that the political battles should be fought before the electorate.
It's a privilege to be in conversation with Justice Bhushan Ramkrishnan Gawai, whose remarkable journey through the law stands as a beacon of resilience, integrity, and hope. From his early days at the bar to his elevation to the Bombay High Court, and ultimately to the Supreme Court of India, Justice Gawai's career is one that truly deserves to be celebrated. For many, his elevation as Chief Justice of India felt deeply personal, a moment of shared pride and possibility. In many ways, his journey reflects the promise of the Constitution, shaped by his humility and perseverance. His story is inspiring and shows that in the law, there are endless possibilities. Yes, Justice Gawai, what a pleasure to have you with us. Your father, R.S. Gawai, was involved very heavily into public life and social justice. And the only two holidays, I believe, and a whole lot of us would know about it, is that the only two holidays which he took was on his birth anniversary and death anniversary. Tell us something about how your father has impacted your life.
You know, my father had jumped into the movement of Dr. Ambedkar from his student days itself.
Okay.
And he was deeply influenced by the philosophy of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. And from childhood, I've seen him actively in social life, in political life. And then earlier days, I used to move around him throughout the state. And I used to see how he used to address to the problems of the people, the downtrodden, the have-nots. And though he was not a lawyer, he had a very sound and deep knowledge of the Constitution. And therefore his philosophy, which he inherited from Dr. Ambedkar, of social and economic justice, it has largely, influenced my journey also.
But he was really involved, and you observed him growing up.
Yeah. That because initially, he started as a student leader. Then he rose to become a member of the state legislature.
All right.
Then he was in the state legislature for 30 years. Then in Lok Sabha, then in Rajya Sabha.
But he was connected to a political party, or
he was connected to the political party of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar.
Okay.
The Republican Party of India.
Party.
Yeah. Now it is in so many groups, divided into so many groups. But at that point of time, it had a very strong hold among the Dalit community in the state, also in the various states. And he was largely aligned with the then Congress Party.
Okay, all right. Now, sir, you come from Amravati, that is the Vidarbha region. How has your journey from Vidarbha to Bombay has affected your career?
I started practice in Mumbai. So I think all of us were juniors from 85 to 90. I practiced here. I was with Barrister Raja Bhosle. So though our practice was largely on the appellate side, but we used to sit in the original side library. And for 5 years I was here. I worked with Rajabhau for around 2 years, and then started my own practice. But Babasaheb Bobde,
yes, of course,
Advocate General, and Mr. V.R. Manohar, both of them legends at the bar. So they advised me that I should shift to Nagpur, because that was my region, and they advised that if I go to Nagpur and start practicing there, I will grow much faster in practice. And so, adhering to their advice, I shifted to Nagpur and then practiced there till I was elevated, and thereafter sat at Nagpur itself, then Aurangabad, and then journey finally to Mumbai before I went to Delhi from here.
Well, my next question is just 2 words. Why law?
Law was not my first choice. I wanted to be an architecture. And But I think my father persuaded me to join law. He wanted to be a lawyer, but since he jumped into politics, into social life, he could not fulfill his desire. And therefore, I think that he wanted his dream to be realized through me. And but I'm happy that I followed his advice.
So it was basically your father who.
Who persuaded me to do the law.
Now, you have been very closely associated with the Bombay High Court, and as a judge of the Bombay High Court, you've had your sittings in Nagpur and Aurangabad also. In fact, I remember
Also Goa also.
Goa also. I remember seeing you in Nagpur in the Nagpur bench also. But thereafter, you shifted to Delhi as a puisne judge, and then ultimately the Chief Justice of India. You find a difference in the culture of functioning between lawyers of Bombay and.
You see, you will find difference everywhere. The difference of functionings of the Bombay lawyers would be different than those working in Nagpur, because Nagpur itself was an high court prior to the reorganization.
Right.
Yeah. Aurangabad and Bombay is almost similar, because the most of the lawyers who were practicing here, they shifted to Aurangabad after the Aurangabad bench was established. But in the Supreme Court, I think, except a top few, so there are lawyers from throughout the country. And it's only very few who get an exposure there. And most of the other lawyers are either AORs or the junior counsels. And therefore, when I went there, I stopped the practice of senior counsels being permitted to mention the matters. I thought that the juniors should get an opportunity, and we have a responsibility to build the next generation of lawyers also.
You often spoken about the vision of Baba Saheb, Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar, as to how the marginalized people who come from marginalized background are not given an opportunity. The first Chief Justice was Justice Balakrishnan, and you are the second Chief Justice from that marginalized background. In fact, you are the first Buddhist to be the Chief Justice of India.
And probably the first Buddhist to be the judge of the Supreme Court.
Judge of the Supreme Court. You feel that you have, in a way, met with the expectations.
In fact, my elevation to the Supreme Court was, in a way, out of turn. And that was,
oh, really?
Yeah. So that was to give representation to the marginalized communities. So I do feel, and in my judgments, you would see that I emphasize on the social and economic justice, the importance of directive principles. So in a way, I got an opportunity to fulfill, in a whatever a little way, the idea of social and economic justice as conceptualized by Dr. Ambedkar.
Yes, in fact, you've spoken so often about the creamy layer, exclusion, etc.
Yes.
But you feel that there is too much of empirical data which is sought, and the whole thing is being paralyzed because of that?
No, I believe that, if the very concept of affirmative action or reservation was that the people who have lagged behind for ages together, for centuries, should be given an opportunity to come forward and have an equal status with those who are already forward. But I find that if after taking reservation, you have already come in the mainstream of the society, then why should such people again continue to have reservation? In fact, my father did not permit any of us to take the facilities of reservations.
Oh, okay.
And therefore, this is one of the most judgments, which is one of my judgments, which is widely criticized by the people from my own community. But they don't understand that you can't equate a son of an IAS officer studying in the best of the schools in Mumbai with a son of a laborer belonging to scheduled caste studying in a Gram Panchayat or a Jilla Parishad school in a village. So if you put them on the same pedestal, you will be, frustrating the very concept of equality. Equality doesn't mean that equality amongst everyone. an unequal treatment to unequals to make them equal is what is conceptualized by the affirmative action.
Well said. Yes. But therefore, what you are suggesting is that if I
don't say exactly criminal. I say my son is entitled to the best of the facilities. I can give him best of schooling. I can give him best of tuitions. And if he is taking a reservation, benefit of reservation, say in an IS or an IPS competitive examination, would it not be, eating upon the person who is entitled to, who is suffering at the grassroots
it will
of
be
the
unjust
society?
on somebody else. Therefore, one generation, if that person has achieved,
Or if, I'm not saying exactly criminal here, but some sort of mechanism should be devised even in scheduled castes or for that matter scheduled tribes, that if you have reached a particular stage, then the children of that person should not be entitled to
that's
reservation.
right. But then this requires a big study. I don't know how and when and
Yeah, it's ultimately the politicians have to worry about the votes, and nobody wants to take a decision which will displease the voting bank. Yeah.
vote
But
bank.
the judges don't have to bother about what the
No,
electorate
that's true.
feel.
That's true. Okay.
And out of the 7, my view was supported by 4 judges.
Now, this collegium system, you were a part of the collegium. A whole lot of people criticize the collegium system. That this is favoritism and nepotism or whatever it is. But nobody comes out with a solution.
Recently, even there was a conference at Bangalore. Some of the colleagues themselves criticized the collegium system. But I believe that in the present situation, the collegium system is the best suited situation. You might recollect the days prior to the collegium system coming into effect. The appointments were largely influenced by political reasons. And the collegium, I don't say that this is a perfect system, but no system would be perfect. There would be some lacunas in every system. But collegium, even at the level of the High Court, the Chief Justice and 2 judges, they consult their senior judges from the benches, their senior judges from the principal seat, and while recommending the name, even the views of the senior lawyers, the Advocate General are taken. And thereafter, the matter comes to the central government. The central government collects the data with regard to intelligence and the other material. Then that is placed before the Supreme Court Collegium.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and the Supreme Court Collegium, after taking consideration all these factors, after consulting the judges who have had an occasion to watch the performance of the candidates from the respective high courts, then they take a final call. Okay. So the views of the executive are also taken into consideration, the views of the intelligence department, the views of the central government, the views of the chief minister and the governor of the concerned state. So it's not as if some people say that it's not a transparent system, the judges appoint themselves, but there are various factors we take into consideration. And you see, during my period, 19 judges have been appointed to the...
I think that was a record appointing maximum number of judges.
Yeah, in the country we appointed 107 judges in the short period that I had. And I'm happy that we could give 19 judges to Bombay High Court. And you see, all of them are performing so well.
All of them.
Yeah. And I was told that the Chief Justice within a short period has given them the assignments of a single judges,
Yes.
most of them.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think this is an example which everybody should think while criticizing the collegium system.
No, but there is that feeling that judges' children or judges' relations get promotion. And
What is wrong in that? A doctor's son can be a doctor. A businessman's son can be a businessman.
a lawyer's son.
A lawyer's son, normally if he sees his father, somebody was telling me who was interviewing, I was told that I told them that Arif is interviewing me. So one of my colleagues in Bombay could said, why doesn't his daughter interviews? He would be a better person to interview. So it's but while considering the judges' kith and kins, the collegium insists on a better performance. So if we if you put performance of the other candidates say at 70, we would require a judge's son or a daughter to be 75, 80.
Oh, so the standard is
The
high.
standard is little higher. And when judges' children are being considered, if the concerned judge he never participated in the collegium proceedings, even if there is a remote possibility.
Okay.
Like while I was the Chief Justice, and some of the names from the Bombay High Court were considered. One of them was my distant relative. One of them was my chamber junior.
Okay.
And I recused from even interviewing them and while taking a decision.
Oh, so you were not part of the collegium?
No, I was not. I recused myself.
recused, yes.
The decision was taken by the two other honorable judges.
Oh, okay. All right. See, this is something which nobody
Yeah, so
knows.
people, but the record would show that I walked out when they were interviewed, and the resolution is passed by only two of them.
Correct.
So somebody suggested I should have inducted the fourth judge to be part of the collegium, but then I don't know what purpose it would have served. There are two senior judges who are on the collegium.
Right.
One of them is now a Chief Justice of
Correct.
India.
Yeah.
The other one is likely to be the next Chief Justice of India.
Correct.
So this criticism is totally unwarranted.
So, see, the general public don't know about this fact.
Yes, and
that
the difficulty.
you accuse yourself.
Yeah, the difficulty is that the entire picture is not brought to the notice of the people.
That's right. So, should it not be something like the decision as to in what manner it was taken, etc., be publicized, or that should be kept a complete secret?
No. The resolutions are already published.
Resolutions are.
Published. We stopped the practice of, giving details. The very purpose was that if you are not considering a candidature of someone,
Yeah.
if you are in effect finding him not suitable, then that decision would affect the candidate who is being considered.
The reason why
if we give reasons, and then while taking a decision, we don't give him an opportunity of hearing. So it will be, doing something to the prejudice of a candidate, and which may adversely affect his career as a lawyer.
Yes, you're right. Yes, that may affect his career. All right. Now, there is interesting issue, namely that you were part of a judgment which punished a Supreme Court lawyer for his two tweets which he made for contempt. Now, where do you draw a line as to a fair comment on a judgment and free speech or...
No, I have always been, see my judgments, they are always in favor of free speech. Fair criticism of a judgment, a fair criticism of a judge also is welcome in the system, because no judge is perfect. We can also commit errors. And we commit errors, therefore there is a review, there is a curative and all that. But maligning a judge without any foundation and thereby maligning the institution itself has to be taken seriously. And we had convicted the particular lawyer after finding that...
There were two tweets.
And they were maligning the entire institution and without any foundation. But then we also shown the magnanimity. We only impose a fine of 1 rupee.
1 rupee penalty. No, but I remember that there was some English judgment also where they have given damages of 1 rupee as a lesson.
As a lesson.
It is not the quantity. It's really,
only, we just wanted to send a message that you should not unnecessarily malign the system.
Correct.
Of which you are a part. And in fact, one of the judgments when I was the Chief Justice, the lawyers in the Supreme Court were held guilty for contempt by a bench of two judges. So one of them had impose heavy penalty with regard and strictures and all that. And the other judge had accepted their apology.
Okay.
So it came before a three judges bench of which I was a part. And I said that they have committed mistakes. If they are tendered an apology and the apology is found to be genuine, there is no point in perpetuating the matter. And so we accepted the view of the learned judge who had accepted the apology and set aside the other view.
The penalty.
Penalty.
Right. Now, sir, you have been very critical about this bulldozers, and you gave a judgment on this that under Article 142 of the Constitution, the principles of natural justice has to be followed. You have to give a show cause notice, given a man a chance as to explain as to how he has done, and don't use a bulldozer judgment. We'd like to know something more about it, please.
You know, when we noticed that the houses, the structures of the suspected criminals were being demolished without following any process of law, one sudden morning or evening, the bulldozers, along with a police party, would come and raise the house. And we found that this was totally contrary to the rule of law. We believe in separation of powers. The executive can't take be an adjudicatory authority and without making a person face the trial already hold him guilty and demolish his house. And the house is occupied by not only one person. There are parents, there are brothers, sisters, children who reside in the house. So you can't punish the entire family. And in any case, merely leave aside that a person is a suspect. Even if he is found to be guilty in a criminal proceedings, you can't raise his house because under the guise that it is an unauthorized construction or that. So you have to follow the principles of law. So therefore we laid down certain guidelines that whenever any structure is found to be unauthorized, a show cause notice would have to be given. Then there has to be supporting material to show that the show cause notice is served. And after serving the show cause notice, an opportunity of hearing is given. After that, the reasons are recorded as to why the house is being found to be unauthorized. Thereafter, sufficient opportunity has to be given for challenging that order. And we also held that if the officers do not follow this procedure, then they will be personally held guilty. Apart from punishing them for contempt of court, they would be required to reconstruct the house. The government would be required to reconstruct the house and recover the cost from such erring officers.
Right.
So that's basically, we have to believe in the rule of law. The constitutional foundation believes in rule of law. And the executive can't break the rule of law and take the law in their hands.
They have to follow the due process.
They have to follow the due process of law.
There have been political matters before you, and we don't know if there is pressure or no pressure, but in the matter of Teesta Setalvad and Rahul Gandhi, you gave them relief. So are you affected? Was there any pressure, etc.? As a judge?
No. As a judge, you have to be true to your oath.
No, let's more details if you don't mind, please.
As a matter of
About
fact,
these two matters especially.
Teesta Setalvad, we were attending the function of one of our colleagues' daughters' Arangetram at Delhi. So I think that was some Saturday, and since the Gujarat, the learned single judge of Gujarat High Court had refused to even stay the order for 24 hours, and the person concerned apprehended that she might be arrested immediately. So they filed an SLP before the court. The matter was listed before the two learned judges, and there was a difference of opinion. One of the learned judges was of the view that at least till Monday she should be protected. The other judge was of the view that it should not be, even till Monday, the protection should not be granted. And the registry was frantically calling the then Chief Justice of India, Justice Chandrachud. So we could see that he was going out of the hall, coming, and then when we broke for tea, then he asked me such and such is the matter, so I have to immediately constitute a 3 judges bench. So would you mind heading it? I said, no difficulty. And then the other honorable 2 judges, Justice Dipankar Datta and Justice Bopanna were also there. So then we immediately left the function halfway and went to the court and we assembled. And the matter was hotly contested, but we asked to question ourselves as to whether, and she was already granted an interim bail by the Supreme Court. So she was on an interim bail. The matter was sent back to the learned judge of to the Gujarat High Court for considering the application for regular bail, and the learned judge rejected it on a Saturday morning without giving a little protection. And therefore, we thought that liberty of a citizen was an important aspect, and therefore we initially granted, after hearing the arguments for almost 1.5 hours, it was hotly contested by the government. We granted protection to her for a week, and then we heard the matter and we granted regular bail because, I have always said in subsequent judgments also that liberty is one of the most important fundamental rights that we have. And the other matter to which you referred was that the person concerned was granted the maximum sentence of 2 years. And the Gujarat High Court refused to, suspend that. And I always believe that in politics, one has to be thick-skinned.
One has to be, sorry?
Thick-skinned.
Yes.
Yeah. And some statement by politicians in here and there should not bother much. And we further found that no reasons were also given as to why the maximum sentence was granted to him. So he was granted 2 years sentence, and the law provides that if somebody has been sentenced to suffer an imprisonment for 2 years and more, he would be disqualified to contest an election of either Lok Sabha or the state legislature. And therefore we state that conviction. But before that, I had asked the lawyers who were appearing from both the sides, because my father was connected with Congress, so whether they would like me to hear this matter or should I recuse myself. So both of them, all the lawyers unanimously said that no, I should go ahead with the matter.
So now that we are discussing about the 2 matters that you mentioned about, during your tenure, you have given bail to a whole lot of people where ED raids are there or they are politically involved. Kavita, what's her name, K. Kavita or Manish Sisodia, etc.
Right, yeah.
So let us have your views on that, please.
When those matters came up before us, there was a trend that on account of the statutory restrictions in certain statutes, the bail should be denied to them. And the bails were denied at the trial court level, at the high court level, and even at the Supreme Court level. And therefore, when one of such matters came up before us, wherein a politician from Delhi was involved, and the bail was vehemently opposed by the government, so we took a view that it was a prolonged incarceration. There was no likelihood of the trial being conducted in the near future. And we held that a prolonged incarceration without a person being made to face a trial would be sentencing him without a trial. So that will be against the rule of law. And statutory restrictions cannot be superior to the fundamental right of liberty. The right to liberty will have to prevail over the statutory restrictions. And there were a series of matters. I don't want to name, you have named some of them. There's some of the matters even from Jharkhand High Court, wherein the politicians were involved and the bails were not being considered. I have always been of the view that the political battles should be fought before the electorate
And not criminalize it.
and not before the courts. The courts cannot be made a ground to settle the political scores.
Now, sir, your Aravali judgment, which it evoked a lot of press and debates. What is your thinking about that judgment as to how?
I think it would not be proper for me to elaborate more on that because the President CJI has already taken sumo to cognizance and it's being reviewed. But according to me, that judgment was totally misunderstood. As a matter of fact, we had directed the Sustainable Mining Development Plan to be prepared for the entire Aravali foothills. And till that was to be prepared and approved, it would have to be finally approved by the court itself. We had banned the entire new mining licenses in the entire Aravali areas. So now the court will take over, and if there is something, this is a matter arising in TN Godavarnam. So these matters are of continuous mandamus. The court has been supervising it over from 1996 for more than last 30 years. And the law has been evolving. If something more needs to be done, it can always be done. It can always be corrected. Because in mining matters, the courts are very sensitive. It is because of the court's orders in TN Godavarnam that we could still see the forests in the country. And I always believe that we have to have a balance between sustainable development and the environmental issues. If you see my various judgments, even as the judge of the Bombay High Court, or I was fortunate to preside over the Green Bench for more than 3 years in the Supreme Court. So I always tried to balance between the protection of environment, protection of ecology, and the sustainable. We need development also. Otherwise, you can't. If there is no development, the country will not progress.
So development and
Development and ecology have to be.
It has to go ahead.
It has to go ahead. Yeah.
That at the cost of environment, you don't allow
Yeah. So therefore, the problem is that people criticize the judgments without even reading them entirely. And I have always said that if something needs to be corrected, it can always be corrected by the court because it's not a matter that which has been given a finality.
Now, there must have been times when, whilst delivering a judgment or hearing a matter, your instincts might feel that, no, I don't want to do this. But then the law forces you to do it. So in these circumstances, how do you...
You always have to decide as per the law. You have taken an oath. Maybe you can mold the relief.
Yeah.
But that molding of the relief has also to be in the four corners of the law. We are not, we can't be errants to do what we like.
No, that's true.
We have taken an oath to abide by law, to decide as per the law and the constitution.
No, but sometimes your instinct says that this law is not good, but I'll have, because it is there, I have to do it. How do you feel at that?
Then you have to do it. If suppose there is a precedent, and if you are having the bench strength is same, you are bound by whatever is the law laid down earlier.
Yes.
If you find that it is not a correct proposition of law, the only option that you have is to refer it to a larger bench.
Larger bench. That's true. Now, your judgment on tribunalization of the independence of the tribunalization, this new act to 2021.
Madras Bar Association.
Madras Bar Association versus Union. So, what is your opinion about this independence of tribunalization and introduction of tribunalization into our system?
No, there has to be an independent, because the tribunals also discharge judicial functions. And if they are not given independence, then you are hitting at the very concept of the independence of judiciary, the separation of judiciary. If the renewal of the tenure of the members of the tribunal is to be dependent upon the bureaucrats, then do you expect they will act independently? If their tenure is 2 years, 3 years, and after 3 years, they will have to look back at the secretaries for renewal of their tenure. So we thought that this is totally, and as Justice Vinod Chandran observed, this is the old wine in the new bottle.
bottle.
Yeah. So there, the same enactment having been quashed 2 times, 3 times, if the parliament comes with the same enactment, then what option we have then to set it aside?
Every judge, for some reason or the other, one of their judgment is criticized. Is there any of your judgment which you think may have been criticized, but in future the people would try and understand and appreciate it more?
I think apart from Aravali judgment and then that creamy layer judgment to which I have already referred, because Aravali has been widely criticized and the creamy layer judgment has been criticized by the people from my own community.
Yes.
The other one is Vanashakti. I think it was widely, there were some articles also written on the judgment. But they did not understand. In Vanashakti, what we have done is only reviewed the earlier judgment. We are not finalized, like some people say that we have given a green signal to the post facto approvals, environmental clearances. The judgment which we reviewed was on the ground because the judgment was by 2 learned judges. There were 2 judgments by another bench which had upheld that notification. So we held that as a matter of judicial propriety, the 2 judges bench is bound to follow the earlier judgment of 2 judges. And to some of the other judgments which were referred to in the judgment which was reviewed by us were by 3 judges, wherein certain paragraphs were brought to the notice of the court and various other paragraphs were not brought to the notice of the court. We also found that had these paragraphs been pointed out to the notice of the court, the view could have been otherwise. So therefore we only recalled the matter and kept it for hearing afresh. So it is being heard by the bench. And then I always say that you can't have a lopsided view. You always have to balance the environmental issues along with the sustainable development.
Yes, that's true. Now, just 2 or 3 more small things. One is you have been an inspiration for a whole lot of generation. What message will you give to the new generation that how they must approach and what should be their outlook towards the life?
No, because, we have to also look at the future of the institution. So I would only, to the younger lots that now I'm happy. Initially, the trend was that the good law students would prefer only corporate law, but many of them are coming into litigation. Only advise them that, because I am an example who has come from a humble background, who has done his initial schooling in a municipal primary school in a semi-slum area, and could rise to the office of the highest judicial office. So if you have hard work, if you have dedication, if you have sincerity, and if you are willing to put in industry, the future is all theirs.
That's true. And just last, what are your plans post-retirement now?
Post-retirement, I'm feeling very relaxed, relieved. Now, I'm devoting more time for my exercises and, other hobbies like reading, traveling, and weekends I normally somewhere in some law school or some bar association, interacting with the students and members of the bar. And of course, for my livelihood, I am now in consultation and the opinions. So it keeps sufficiently busy. I can work how much I want to work and don't work beyond what I don't want to.
Thank you so much, Jay. What a
Thank
pleasure
you very
it
much.
was.
Thank you.
What a pleasure it was.